This is Excel Tips, a podcast for accounting and finance professionals, brought to you by CPA Australia.
Welcome to the Excel Tips podcast. My name is Neil Blackwood, and in this episode, we're going to look at heat maps. Now, heat maps are typically used to display climate or weather information, but have you thought about using them to analyse your sales information or your costs information? Well, you can in Excel, and we'll cover how you can do that in this podcast, as well as looking at a few other options that you've got analysing top and bottom values. So a heat map is a data visualization that uses colour to identify high numbers and low numbers. And typically a single colour is used, but you can use multiple colours. That does tend to get a bit gaudy, so a single colour is advised. And so the low numbers in terms of sales could be white, and then the high numbers could be a dark blue, and then there's shades of blue used to identify all of the numbers in between. So this allows you to look at a large report. Now, in our example, and I recommend you check out the video, because that obviously for data visualizations, seeing things makes a big difference. Also, the video has all of the instructions to create these heat maps in Excel. They're actually called color scales in Excel, but they do create the heat maps. So in the video, you'll see that we've got a two-dimensional grid that we've used to plot every sales day for the 23-24 financial year. And so you can see all of the sales days in one single page. Now, as I mentioned, they're called color scales in Excel, and they're part of the conditional formatting option, which is on the home ribbon. When you click on color scales, you'll find that there's about 12 icons displayed, but that's a little bit misleading because there's really only 4 options. There's 2 options, and then there's 2 options within each of those 2 options. And so the first set of options is whether high is good or whether low is good. So if you're looking at sales, then obviously high is good. If you're looking at something like costs or your golf score, then low is good. And so based on being good, you'll use a color. Now, the standard colors that are used are green is good and red is bad. I'll come back to that when we talk about color blindness. So that's the standard coloring that are the default colors for conditional formatting. Now, the other thing you can change is how many colors you use. You can use either 2 or 3 colors. When I say that, it can be a bit misleading because you can use white as a color. And when you use white as one of the colors, you are in effect just using one color. And actually, that's what I recommend. If you use 2 colors, or especially 3 colors, it does get very gaudy and it is actually harder to read. Just using white and a color allows you to create a visualization that's a bit easier on the eye than using 2 or 3 colors. Now, colors. Color blindness is something you should take into account. Color blindness affects about 1 in 12 men and about 1 in 100 women. So it is a male problem, but it is something that you should consider when choosing the colors. Red-green color blindness is one of the most common forms. Now, colors that are safe for people with color blindness are colors like blue, orange, and gray. And you'll find that Excel's default charts, when they create visualizations, tend to use those colors first. So when you see the 12 different icons on the color scale options, it's basically just different combinations of those 4 different types. Now, in the grid that was created to show the complete year, there were some what I'll call illegal days. So these are things like the 31st of September. So the grid had 31 days across the top and the months listed down. So obviously the 31st of September doesn't exist. So instead of showing that as white, which sort of looks like a low sales day when it's actually a no sales day, I've changed that to use a separate conditional format to turn any illegal days black. So they're sort of ignored. You can have as many conditional formats as you need in Excel. One of the problems with heat maps is it can be a little bit overwhelming to try and understand all of the different shades of the one color. Can also be a little bit hard to pick up patterns. So consider using a top and bottom rules conditional format. What this does, it allows you to isolate the top certain number of items in isolation, as well as the bottom number of certain items in isolation. So this can make it a little bit easier maybe to pick up patterns on when these high values are appearing. Excel has a conditional format called top and bottom rules. And within that, there are options for a top 10 and a bottom 10. Now, it's not as restrictive as it sounds, so the top and bottom numbers are available for you to change. In the case of the video, we looked up the top 12 sales as well as the bottom 12 sales. And you can apply a color to those. Now, this color is the solid color. It's not a color that is shades of a different color. So that can be a lot easier to spot patterns, if you like, on where the high sales days are and also the low sales days. A problem with the top 10, bottom 10 is you would like the ability to change that number and just see the effect on the data visualization. Unfortunately, the top 10, bottom 10 doesn't allow interaction with the sheet. Many conditional formats do, but not the top 10, bottom 10. So what I've done in the example is to show you how you can use formulas in helper cells to actually work with conditional formats to allow that flexibility in the top 10, bottom 10. So you can change a cell value and that will automatically update the data visualization.
If you're enjoying this podcast, you should check out our in-depth business and finance show, In the Black. Search for In the Black on your favourite podcast app today.
So the functions that work well with the top 10, bottom 10, or whatever number you choose are the large function and the small function. Now, they're a little bit similar to the max and the min function. So max finds the largest value, whereas the large function actually allows you to define the position number that you want to identify. So if we use 12, it will find the 12th largest number. And then we can use that as part of a conditional format to actually identify those. And the small function, that allows you to find the value of, in this case, the 12th smallest number in that range. And so it's very easy to use the cell's value conditional format to link to individual cells. So we can specify a color for the top 12 and then a different color for the bottom 12. And we also need to cover those illegal dates as well, which again, I used black for. So heat maps and those top and bottom rules can make understanding large volumes of numbers a lot easier. It can help you to find trends or patterns. It can be really useful for sales or any other values that are affected by seasonality or special dates like, say, Christmas or Easter. So check out the video and see if the heat maps and the top and bottom rules can help you understand your numbers a little bit better. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to Excel Tips, a CPA Australia podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, help others discover the show by leaving us a review or sharing this episode with colleagues, clients, or anyone else looking for the best Excel tips and tricks. To find out more about our other podcasts and CPA Australia, check out the show notes for this episode. And we hope you can join us next time for another episode of Excel Tips.